Good evening. My name is Tom Geminder. I am a parliamentarian, meeting facilitator, mediator, and all sorts of other things from St. Paul, so I have no opinion on this issue. I have moderated some other forums that you've had out here in Roseville, and I enjoy doing it. Tonight we're doing a trash forum, and you've all seen the flyer, so you know what it's about. On your chairs there are question cards. So if you have a question, fill it out, put it up, somebody will come around and collect it. If you want to direct it to a specific person, if you could put their name on, that would be helpful. We're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. We're going to start off with the opening statements where they will explain their position or the position of, like, I think you're going to tell us about the law. No, he's going to tell us something else. Whatever it is, he's first. And they will speak for up to 10 minutes on that. When we get to the question periods, we're going to try to limit the questions to 2 minutes. And so, and we have a fancy light up here. So the panel all knows when you have 30 seconds left, you will get the yellow light. Can you flip that one up there? Let's see it. So they can see it. There's the yellow, and then when your time is up, you get the red. And actually, that reflects off the front here, so everybody in the room is going to know you're talking to them.
Red light's on you.
The red is not on the place, good. I don't expect any action. So, we're going to start off. I'm going to ask the panel members, first of all, to introduce themselves and give an opening statement, and then pass it along down the line. We're going to start off with Doug Root. Doug?
Thank you. This microphone's going to be a little hotter than that. My name is Doug Root, and for the past year and a half or so, I've been working with the Roseville citizens to put together a forum such as this one, because it seemed that there were issues worthy of discussion in our community, and possibly opportunities for doing things in a different way. The task that I reserved for myself on the panel was to describe the current status quo in Roseville. And I put together a one-page front and back handout that I hope most of you have. But it's information off of the Roseville City webpage. One side is a map of Roseville showing 5 zones. They are 5 zones for the 5 weekdays. And if you're in zone Monday, your trash collection is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On the other side is a list of licensed haulers and a for information only list of prices from those haulers for various size containers. And then at the bottom of that page, there is a site or a citation to a study of organized trash collection options that was conducted by the MPCA. That full report is some 270 pages long and difficult for me to discern. The last bit of information on that page is a citation again to a 2-page fact sheet from the Trash Haulers Association that has some of their points of view. All of that information is readily available to you through our electronic communication channels these days. So, in Roseville, we have a non-organized trash collection system at present. On the day of the week when your zone is collected, as many as 8 trucks will come through your neighborhood collecting trash from you and your neighbors. We also have 8 choices, at least 8 choices. No matter which zone you live in, there are 8 haulers from which you might contract services. Each of us do that individually. Also, most of you in the audience remember, as I do, that in the early 70s, we disposed of our trash in Roseville in burn barrels in the backyard. And it was one of my chores growing up to take the household trash out and burn it in the barrel. And small boys sometimes enjoyed that task. At least I did.
So did I.
In 1991, we as a community considered organized trash collection and decided not to. In 2001, it was again considered, and the city, through various municipal government actions, decided not to go to organized trash collection. So here we are 10 years later. Maybe it's time to think again. And not going to state a position in favor or against. The Roseville Citizens League has not taken a position in favor or against. And I do want to give a little plug for this group of Roseville citizens who, from time to time, take up issues of importance to the community. We have sponsored pre-primary election candidate forums. We have sponsored a trash forum. We sponsored a forum on traffic issues in Roseville. And in each case, we, hopefully in this one as well, we will encourage citizens to contact their elected officials, the decision makers, who can impact that particular issue. We certainly did that with the traffic issue. And my colleagues in the Roseville Citizens League did a great deal of work to bring this forum together this evening. And I thank you for coming, because without your attendance, our efforts would have been for naught. So that's current status in Roseville as I know it, and the other panelists have other tasks to present, and I will pass this to the next panelist, Susan Naughton.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Naughton, and I'm a staff attorney at the League of Minnesota Cities. And the League of Minnesota Cities does not have a position on organized collection. I'm just here to talk to you about the statutory process for a city that wants to organize collection. And I want to start out by asking for a show of hands. Is there anyone in the audience that's not completely sure what is meant by organized collection? Anyone out there that's not completely sure? Okay, I think then it might be helpful to start out with a definition. State law defines organized collection as a process or a system for solid waste collection in which a specific collector or an organization of specific collectors are authorized by the city to collect solid waste in a defined geographic service area or areas. And then the opposite of organized collection is what Mr. Root described to you, open collection, what Roseville has today. There's two ways in which organized collection can be implemented. It can either be initiated by a county or by a city or town. And what I'm going to describe to you tonight is the process that a city must go through if they want to organize collection. The process is set out in state statute, in Minnesota statutes, section 115A.94. And I included the statute in the back of my handout that's titled Organized Collection, for anyone who wants to actually look at the specific language of the statute. A couple things about the statute. It was adopted in 1987, so it's been around now for almost 25 years. It establishes a unique and lengthy process that a city must go through if they want to organize collection. Essentially, though, there are 6 steps that a city must go through before they can implement organized collection. And on the back of the first page of my handout, there's an arrow that has those 6 steps highlighted. The first step that a city must do is provide notice of a public hearing to consider organizing collection. You need to provide public notice as well as mailed notice to any solid waste collectors that are operating in the city. The notice needs to be provided at least 2 weeks before the public hearing, and it needs to invite the participation of all interested persons, including solid waste collectors, in the planning and implementation of the of the organized collection system. The next step is to hold the public hearing. And some cities, after they hold the public hearing, decide they don't want to go any further in the process and it just ends. But for cities that are still interested in pursuing organized collection, they move on to the third step, which is for the city council to adopt a resolution of intent to organize collection. That resolution triggers 2 90-day periods. The first 90-day period is called a planning period, and the second 90-day period is called a negotiation period. What's supposed to happen during the planning period is the city develops or they supervise the development of different proposals for organized collection. And they're supposed to do that by inviting all interested persons, it's usually the organized collectors who are the interested persons, and use them as a resource in coming up with the different proposals. At the end of that 90-day planning period, what is supposed to happen is a negotiation period where the city discusses discusses the different proposals that came up during the planning period and tries to reach agreement with all the solid waste collectors that have indicated that they're interested in being included in the organized collection process. However, if at the end of those 90 days there isn't an agreement, the City Council is authorized to propose an alternate system for organizing collection, and it's the City Council that will ultimately select or decide what system of organized collection it wants to implement. One thing I'd point out is at the beginning, when that resolution is adopted of the intent to organize collection, if there's an agreement at that point between the city and all of the solid waste collectors that are operating in the city, they can skip these 2 90-day periods. They don't have to go through the planning process and through the negotiation period, but that's only if there's an agreement by everybody. The next step is the city chooses which proposal they want to implement, and then they are required to adopt some specific findings. The first finding is they need to describe in detail the process they went through in order to plan and implement organized collection. And then the second group of findings they need to do, they need to evaluate whichever system they selected in light of at least 4 different criteria. They have to show how it supports achieving the city's stated organized collection goals, minimizing the displacement of collectors, ensuring the participation of all interested persons in the planning and implementation process, and maximizing the efficiency of solid waste collection. So that, in a nutshell, is the statutory process that must be followed, and I'll keep us on schedule by passing it on to the next speaker, which I assume is to my left. This is Scott.
Good evening, my name is Scott Kodak. I'm from the City of North St. Paul, Public Works Director, and also Fire Chief of North St. Paul. North St. Paul, I'm here this evening to talk about our community as we've gone through the organized collection in years past and have been organized since 2001, when North St. Paul entered into a contract with organized collection with one hauler. Prior to that, North St. Paul was actually organized collection back in 1986. At that time, we had 14 haulers that made up that organized collection, and it was a zone format throughout the city. Obviously, North St. Paul is a much smaller city than Roseville. We're collecting on the residential side approximately 3,500 single-family homes. Our organized collection does not include the commercial collection. We're only doing the organized collection for the single-family residential homes. So that may be a difference in something to think about. Again, we have about 3,500 homes. Over those years from 1986 to about 1997, where we had the organized collection of 14 haulers, those 14 haulers diminished just over their own attrition through those years by either haulers being bought out or going out of business, whatever it may have been. We went from 14 haulers down to 4 haulers that made up those collection zones throughout the city. Then in around 1997, we started talking about organized collection to go to 1 hauler. And in 2001, September of 2001, after going through processes that you're going through here and having public discussions and sending out RFPs and going through that whole process, we ended up selecting 1 hauler and entered into a contract in 2001 for 1 hauler to provide collection for the entire city. That hauler also provides our recycling, and after about 6 years with the hauler with that contract, we also developed a program called bulk collection, where each residence pays a monthly fee for bulk collection, and you can place anything out at curbside for no additional charge, whether it be a couch, television, large item things that wouldn't necessarily normally go on the trash street. We moved to that model. Prior to that, we had a program where you would pay X dollars to dispose of a mattress or dispose of a television or things like that. And what we found, our code enforcement was finding that a lot of these items were ending up in backyards or in garages or wherever it might be, because people weren't disposing of them because there was an individual cost. When we went to a fee for all residents for bulk collection, that helped that dramatically. Our code enforcement issues on the exteriors and also things that were piling up in basements and things like that. When we first started that program, the program was extremely utilized because people were cleaning out. Over the last, I think we've had it about 3-4 years. That started to, services started to dwindle down, but it's really helped keep the city clean. So I would give that as something to give some good thought to. As I mentioned, we started a contract in 2001. We renegotiated that contract a couple times, and we're currently with the same hauler that we started out with in 2001. We're under contract with that hauler until 2016. And through that time, we've been able to renegotiate the contract and maintain no fuel surcharges and things like that you'll notice in a lot of contracts, especially in today's market with the rising fuel costs. So we've been real fortunate and overall very happy with the contract that we've had with the haulers. So throughout the evening, as you listen to some of the other speakers, again, I'm here to kind of answer some of the questions of the city that has organized collection and what we've gone through in providing that. One of the issues that we have, we provide the billing for all the trash collection to the city. Because the city of North St. Paul provides our own electric utility service, we are the electric provider. We also have sewer and water. So on your monthly utility bill, you'll get billed for sewer, water, electric, and trash, recycling. Everything is under one monthly bill.
Thank you.
I'm going to hear from Joel Hanson from Little Canada.
Good evening. I'm Joel Hanson, City Administrator of Little Canada, and I'm here to review our organized collection program. Little Canada adopted this back in 1989, just before I started working with the city. So it's been in place about 22 years. We originally had 4 haulers. Through attrition, we now have 3. The haulers were assigned zones based on their percentage of business at the time the system was implemented. So the council at that time tried to be very fair and maintain the current business volume that those haulers have. We have about 1,700 residents in our program. We have a lot of multi-families in our city. They are not included, commercial properties are not included. It's single family and 2-family homes. We have single sort recycling by 2 of the haulers, Allied Waste and Waste Management, and we have dual sort recycling by Gene's Disposal. Gene's does not have the capability of single sort, and so we adapted our system to ensure that he could still provide services to the residents he served. We provide for bulky item pickup like North St. Paul. People get 3 bulky items a year under our contract. We have yard waste collection. It's unlimited. You pay $48 a year. That's an elective service. You don't have to choose that. But people who do, put it out the curb and your yard waste is taken care of. Christmas tree pickup is included. We used to have cleanup days, and much like Scott said, we have problems. When I first started the city, we'd find couches, appliances dumped in our ditches along roadsides. We don't have that anymore. That problem has gone away. People now dispose of things properly because we provide a method for them to do it that doesn't cost them an arm and a leg. We have a senior bag service available. After our program started, we had a few calls from seniors who said, you know, a 30-gallon service is still way too much for me. I don't put out that much waste. And so we provided this bag rate where all they do is put out a bag, put a sticker on it. Whenever they have it, it's put out the curb. Otherwise, they're not charged other than for what they put out. We have performance clauses in our contract. You know, if there's missed pickups, if things are dumped in the street, if they don't provide notice to our residents, if they fail to pick up recyclables, don't tell our residents why, they can be charged for that thing. The haulers work very well with us. We have not had to implement any of those charges against the haulers, but again, we have those clauses in place that if things were not handled right, they would be penalized for that. I want to point out too, with this organized system, this ensures that every single family and 2-family home in the city is participating in our waste system. You don't get to not have your garbage put out and then go put it in somebody else's dumpster in the downtown area or whatever. Everybody is in this system. From our standpoint, we'd say the pros of this system have been less costly because the city negotiated this contract has more leverage than an individual homeowner has in dealing with the contractors. We have less garbage trucks on our streets. We can specify where the refuse goes to the refuse-derived fuel facility, rather than going to a landfill and having to deal with other environmental concerns associated with that. We think it's worked well for the haulers in that they're guaranteed they get paid. If somebody, in our old system, we now bill like North St. Paul does, but when we started, the haulers billed. And if they didn't get paid, they'd tell us, we would pay them and then certify the collection of the taxes. Today, we bill it now as part of our utility billing, so people are billed on a quarterly basis. Some of the cons for this system that I've dealt with, and I'll say that they have dwindled a lot over the years. When I first started, the lack of choice was emphasized by a number of people. How can the city tell me I have to use this hauler? Why can't I pick my hauler? I don't get that comment very often today. Government deciding for people who their hauler is going to be. That rankles some people. That's just part of the system. I think there's a potential loss of personalization of services. In meetings I presented this kind of information at before, I've heard citizens say, well, my hauler's so good, they take care of all my special needs. If that's the case, you maybe don't get that in an organized system, although I think we do a pretty good job of providing a comprehensive set of services. And it limits business opportunities for the haulers. And the haulers are only going to grow by growth in their service zone. If there's not growth in their service zone, they don't have the opportunity to go in and attract new customers. And I'll say the other big con is this is tough to implement. It takes strong political will for a city to do this because a lot of people are concerned. There's a pretty good lobbying effort on the part of haulers to combat this because they're concerned about competition and what it means for their business. But in our experience, and I think our council would tell you, it's worked out very well. And I can maybe best evidence that by this past summer, we just conducted a survey by Decision Resources where they surveyed 400 randomly selected people. And we ranked a number of services in the city. We asked them about the trash service, what was their satisfaction level. 92% rated it excellent or good. 4% were fair, 1% was poor, and 5% didn't know. And I think those are largely people in multifamily units that were contacted. So it seems to have been very well accepted by our residents based on those survey results.
Thanks, Bill. My name is John Matthew. I'm going to try to find my notes here before I stand up. I'm on the city council in Maplewood, and we're in the middle of a process, the statutory process that Susan outlined for considering organized collection. In some ways, the resolution of intent to organize is a little bit of a misnomer because there are all sorts of outcomes from the process that don't involve organizing that you still have to go through the process really to get to. But that's what it's required to be called. So one reason I think I'm here is because of we're amidst that process. The other reason is that I've sort of taken this on personally as a member of the council and gotten very involved in understanding all of the details of it and doing a lot of independent research to better understand the economic parameters in particular. And so I think that's another reason that I've been asked here since some members of the RCL have seen some of the things that I've written about that. So first of all, let me tell you, related to that, I, on my own time, and my own personally funded website, I have a blog where I write about what I'm doing on the city council at sometimes very great length. And I have a tag there specifically for organized collection. And I have been writing on that since the start of this entire process. Some of it's now outdated information. It was based on what I knew a year and a half ago with whatever was available to me. Some of it's much more recent. If you're interested in that, I invite you to go to www.johnnephew.com/garbage, and that will give you a list of all the posts that I've written on the garbage topic, including far more than possibly you want to know. So I'm going to try to cover these two things, the process and my research, as quickly as I can to stay within the 10 minutes. The process in Maplewood really began with a citizen-driven interest. The volunteers on our Environmental and Natural Resources Commission for a couple of years running wanted the city to talk about this and had it on their list of goals. And it finally actually came to us at the City Council last year, early in, I think it was in the late spring initially, and then a second meeting with more information later in the summer. At the second meeting, Mr. Carnival attended actually, and expressed an interest on behalf of the Waste Haulers Association that they wished to have a chance to speak with the City Council about this topic before we went further with it. And what we proposed was to call a public meeting just devoted to this, to invite input both from haulers and also from the public at large in Maplewood. And that meeting took place in October. It had an interesting format because what we basically did was we didn't do any talking, which for me, especially at council meetings, is pretty unusual. But we had quite a lot of citizen feedback, and we took notes on big whiteboards and wrote down things about what they liked about their trash hauler, what services they were concerned about, because if we did an organized system, we wouldn't want to cut people out from any of those personalized things that Joel mentioned, and other concerns that they had about either the current system or what might happen to the organized collection. Subsequent to that meeting, which was very well attended, we had the official public hearing required by the statute and with all the other notice requirements and so forth on March 28th. And there was again a large public turnout for that, and the council, by a 4-1 vote, passed the resolution intent to organize, kicking off the formal process of beginning this. Over the summer, we put together what was called a trash hauling working group, and that consisted of 2 council members, environmental commissioners, city staff, and there was also an outside consultant with experience in this area who was helping us with it. We had a series of meetings that were all open to the public. All the trash haulers were invited, and we had time at each one of those meetings to get input so that we could work on this process. We had 2 tracks, we still have 2 tracks in fact. One is developing an organized alternative, and the other is studying what the current system really works, and how it works in practice. Where we are at right now is that this summer the City Council approved a request for proposals that came through the trash hauling working group. That request for proposals went out, and haulers were invited to make proposals to us. It's not quite the same as a bid because there are parameters for negotiation to reach all the final details of the contract. The trash hauling working group has read and ranked those proposals. Because this is an ongoing process, even though I read them all, I have to be careful about saying things because it is an ongoing process. But conveniently, I got a copy of the agenda report for Monday's environmental meeting, where the city staff provides the official summary of where we are at with those proposals. The trash hauling working group determined that there were 4 responsive proposals submitted. So some of the proposals and alternatives didn't meet the requirements and so could not be considered for one reason or another. There were a total of 6 companies that gave us responses. All 4 proposals are very competitive. Upon initial analysis, many of the proposals, if implemented, would save residents money and meet all of the goals outlined by the City Council for a citywide residential trash collection system. So the shorter answer is that we have a series of things, a number of alternatives that would save the city money. We've ranked them, and at the end of this month at a council meeting, there will be a formal vote to authorize the city staff to begin negotiating with the top ranked proposal. And then if that falls through, they could move on to the second ranked and so forth. This will ultimately result in a contract that is brought to the city council probably in late November. And at that point, the city council will make a decision on whether these very specific details in that contract, which will include things like what residents would pay for a 30-gallon trash bin next year in fees and total expenses, what it would cost for yard waste pickup, etc. They would be able to compare that system to what is actually the case in Maplewood, and then decide if the benefits outweigh the losses of what we would have by giving up choice and the other negatives that have been brought up as potential side effects of organizing. And so I think that this is a very good process for us to have because we don't pull the trigger, as it were, until we have something very concrete. And the contract also has a lot of details on how prices are set in coming years on the basis of objective indexes such as the CPI and the Midwest Diesel Fuel Index and so forth. So we avoid arbitrary price increases over the duration of the contract. Part 2, my research. I'm going to begin by saying that I had 2 really pretty serious misconceptions when this first came to us in the City Council. Assumptions I had that turned out to be very wrong. The first assumption, and this was reflected, I think, in the top thing that people would bring to me when they would contact me and say, I'm really opposed to this idea of the government getting involved in our trash. This was the assumption that it would cost more. And I believe that we would be looking at a difficult choice of weighing environmental benefits and long-term savings of various types against the short-term expense. And what I found very quickly when I began studying the issue is that the savings are immediate and they're enduring. You can look at a city like White Bear Lake. A resident in White Bear Lake pays less than a resident in Maplewood, and they've had organized hauling since the 1920s at least, according to what they've found in their city archives. And so this idea that, first of all, it would cost more, and second, that once you get into it, then the haulers will jack up the rates on you, just didn't actually have a basis in fact. And that's been borne out by studies of various sorts that have been done over the years. Pretty much every time I've seen a city study this and issue their findings, usually a committee of some type, that's what they found. And I verified it in looking at the rates of cities around the metro that have organized hauling, what their residents pay, and what the rates are that are reported by haulers to the city of Maplewood as their official rates. And like Roseville, we have an ordinance that requires them to haul those rates, and they're published on the city website, just like the list that you see in Roseville. And I should mention, when we're making this comparison, there's another aspect to it that often is overlooked. For example, in White Bear Lake, they have a fee that they list on their website, but you may not realize that that fee includes the recycling charge. In Maplewood, we have a separate recycling charge, which is we have organized recycling, and it costs our residents $2.22 a month, which is very low compared to many cities, especially if you have to arrange it yourself with your hauler. But in White Bear Lake, that's part of their charge. So they pay a monthly fee that includes recycling. In some cities, like Little Canada and North St. Paul, they have higher rates, but they also include a whole bunch of those add-on services across the board, the bulky item pickup, etc., yard waste in some cases, and so forth. So that makes it hard sometimes to make those comparisons. The other thing then was, in terms of mistaken assumptions, was that we had this list of the rates reported by haulers. And I figured what that would mean is that this would be the official sort of MSRP, you know, and that there would be individual residents who probably negotiated a better deal, either in order to price match a competitor or an introductory offer or what have you. And the forms that we give out say very clearly this is not supposed to be your introductory rate, you're supposed to tell us the regular rate. Well, when we started having meetings and talking about these prices that were official, we got some phone calls, emails from residents who said, you know, I don't understand these numbers you're talking about. I looked at my bill, it's a much bigger number. And so this got me looking into that. I actually asked for copies of the bills, and it got me into the whole subject of researching what residents were actually paying. And I have a really large amount of information on this because I put out a call and I wrote to everybody who had written to me on the topic. And I assembled 55 sets of trash bills, in some cases multiple bills from the same household, but 55 different households, in some cases even townhome associations, and got a picture of what residents were actually paying versus what the haulers reported to the city of Maplewood. To summarize that real briefly, the base collection rate that haulers reported was lower than what the average resident actually paid. Not including any other extra fees or surcharges, on average, it was about 11% higher that they were actually paid. The other factor that I found was that there are various fees and surcharges, fuel surcharges, environmental fees, etc. These are really just set by the hauler's discretion. They charge taxes on it just like their basic fee. And you don't have that in the organized collection cities, but you have to take into account if you want to make comparisons on the economics. And what I found is if you included those fees, it averaged 26% higher than the rates reported to the city. In individual cases, I found people who were paying as much as 135% more. It's almost 2.5 times as much as what the official hauler rate was reported under our ordinance to the city of Maplewood. And so these are just kind of a summary of the information. There's a heck of a lot more detail about it. But the long and the short is that people are paying more than they perhaps ought to. And I would invite you to take home the information and look at your own trash bills. I can tell you that the couple of people that I had asked in Roseville about their trash bills early on in this process did that. They went and looked at their bill, and I compared it to the Roseville City website, and I found their hauler was charging them 31% more than the official rate. So I suspect that this is probably happening here just as it is in Maplewood. And with that, I'll move along.
Thank you, John. As I said, my name is Doug Carnival, and I represent the National Solid Waste Management Association, which is the Association of Haulers. And as you might imagine, I take a little bit of a different perspective on this issue than some of the other people who have spoken here, especially the gentleman to my left. I want to talk about 5 different things very quickly in the 10 minutes I've got. One is the experience we've had in other communities that have looked at this, and the overwhelming feeling that citizens want choice in what they seek in a garbage service. Second, I want to talk about the small impact on small haulers of a change in the system and what it does to these small businesses in your community. Third, we'll very briefly talk about some of the price issues in the marketplace that exists out there. The cost of government that it might be involved here if you go to this kind of system, and then very briefly talk about the road wear. So I want to cover those very, very briefly. We've been involved in this issue for almost 20 years, and I think you heard from folks here at the table that the last time anyone went to an organized system like this, at least among these folks, 20 years ago. In that period of time, 19 communities that we are aware of have looked at organized collection, including this community a couple of times, and have not gone in that direction. In each case, they've rejected proceeding to organized collection. Why? Because the citizens overwhelmingly have come forward and said they don't want it. They want choice, they want to make these decisions themselves. They don't want the government to decide this for them. Someone mentioned a poll about how happy people are with organized collection in a particular city. We just did a poll and engaged Mason-Dixon Polling, which is a nationally known polling firm for the city of Maplewood. And as you might imagine, 90% of the people in that community are happy with their current haulers, and 3 to 1, they want to stay with the current system rather than move to an organized system. They don't want this to be a government-controlled service. It's not a kind of critical service like snow removal, police and fire that they want the city to get involved in. Thousands of citizens over the last 19 communities have shown up and expressed that concern. Many thousands have provided postcards to cities and counties saying, don't do this. People have shown up at City Hall and overwhelmingly oppose this. They do like to choose. Many of them like to choose because of relationships they have with their current haulers, many of whom are local small businesses in your community. These folks have made a livelihood over the years, providing you with the best service that they can at a reasonable price, and in many cases there have been generations of families that have done business with the same hauler. Some people like to shop on price. John talks about price. Other people like to shop on service and relationships, and everybody can make that balance, make the equation of deciding how they want to proceed forward. In the city of Falcon Heights, the former mayor stood up in a public hearing and said, if I'm not happy with my hauler, it takes me 2 15-second phone calls to get what I want. If I'm not, I call the first guy and say, stop coming. I call the second guy and say, start coming. It's his decision. He gets to make the determination on what's important to him. So shopping is important. If you're not satisfied with your rates, call somebody else, ask them to give you a different rate, negotiate. You're all intelligent people, and you do this with everything you do business with. Ironically, we don't have a monopoly problem in the community. It's not like we have only 2 haulers or 1 hauler who's providing you with a monopoly situation. You've got many choices. If you go to organized collection, you'll in fact create a monopoly in the community. That's not what we want in this country. That's not the way we do business. In the last 15 years, Apple Valley, Barton Hills, Coon Rapids, Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, Prior Lake, Stillwater, Township, St. Anthony, all looked at this, among others, and decided not to go in this direction. I mentioned small haulers. It's important for you to understand that many of the people who provide service in your community are small family-owned businesses. They've invested their livelihoods and all they own in trying to provide this service and make a living. You go to organized collection, you're going to end up with many of these people being forced out of your community, prevented from selling their services to you in this community, not because they're not doing a good job, it's because someone else has decided that they'd rather do it for you, that they'd rather negotiate for you rather than you making those decisions, based upon their own family needs. For many people, this is their 401k plan. They've invested everything that they have into this business, hoping to be able to somewhere down the line be able to get something out of it. Let me talk about the marketplace just briefly. You've got many choices in the city: small haulers, large haulers, family-owned businesses, multinational companies. Each company's got a different strategy. Each company wants to grow in the community. They compete very fiercely on the street, and as a result, that all benefits the consumer. Some companies will come in with discounts to try and gain your business. Others will come in with the best kind of service you can imagine to provide your business. You're being an educated consumer, testing those companies, what they do for you, and at what price is the best way to get good, vigorous competition so that you get the best situation. Also want to point out that we don't do this. We don't ask the government to make these decisions for us in any other area. What would it be like if the city could get a deal on the clinic down at the corner saying, we can get a discount for your doctor's pills if everybody went to the same doctor, and we're deciding you need to go there. Or everybody has to go to the same pharmacy in the community because we can negotiate a lower rate for you. That's not the way we do business. You don't do that on internet, telephone, satellite, cell phone. You don't do it on gasoline or groceries or anything else. We don't ask the city to negotiate on our behalf because we like to make those decisions ourselves. In terms of price is only one factor, as I said. As people look at these decisions, they look at relationships, they look at services provided. We had a situation in Olmsted County where a gentleman came up and said, my mother has had the same local hauler for 25 years. She's infirm, she's elderly. That hauler not only comes up to her house and takes the garbage, he checks in on her every week to make sure she's okay. From my perspective, she's probably willing to pay a little bit more. You go to an organized system, you can't have that kind of service. People aren't going to hustle to make sure that they get your service. It's not the role for government to make that decision. One size doesn't fit all. A well-informed consumer is frankly the best. Let me mention just briefly the cost of government. Do you think this is all free? Well, you go down this road, it's a year's process. You're going to have to hire a consultant. Our friends in Maplewood have spent, I believe, $50,000 or $60,000 on an outside consultant. That doesn't even count the staff time that's been involved, or any legal fees that are going to be involved. They're talking about buying new carts for the residents, $500,000 to $1 million investment. Who's going to pay for all of that? The taxpayers, of course. So it's not as if this is going to run free and you're going to not have additional costs. And frankly, if you're not happy, what do you have to do? You've got to call City Hall rather than get results from your local hauler. People often talk about road wear. There's no studies that we're aware of today, no scientific evidence that shows that organized gun collection is going to save you anything on your roads. Matter of fact, just today I was in Roseville this morning meeting with MnDOT, who's in the process of trying to analyze what the road wear on trucks is, garbage trucks and then ultimately other trucks. You can't say that this system is going to save you road wear because there's been no scientific evidence to prove that. So in conclusion, of the 20 communities that have looked at this, they've rejected it in each case. The citizens have come forward and said, we want choice. That's what the important thing is to them. They don't want government making the decisions for them, and frankly, informed consumers who decide things on their own is the best way to go as far as we're concerned, and that in these economic times, cities ought not get into the garbage business. Thank you.
Before we get to Dick, I remind you to write out your questions. I don't have any questions up here yet, so please start writing them out so they can get handed up, because after Dick, we're going to go to questions.
Thank you all for coming, by the way. My name is Dick Lambert, and I'm identified, I think, on the flyer as being the chairman of the Roseville Citizens League. And I just want to lead off by saying nothing I'm about to say here has gotten any approval or anything from the Roseville Citizens League. This is Dick Lambert's idea, period. There's no question that having trash collection done by a single hauler would save money, some air in the streets, and probably have a positive effect on air pollution. Or there are many people that are vehemently opposed to the government, their government taking over their right to choose a home. Given the tremendous problems we face at all levels of government in the coming years, I personally don't think giving a sizable number of citizens a reason to hate their government is a really good idea by mandating organized trash collection. It's not a wise expenditure of political capital. In my opinion, it's not necessary. What I'm proposing is a plan that would have the city offer organized collection to those homeowners who want it, but guarantee the right of any homeowner that didn't to opt out. This completely eliminates the problem of people worrying about the government taking something over that they don't want to take over, somebody giving up a service that they don't think they can get from the quote-unquote city's hauler, and it's not taking over another aspect of their lives. So basically, it seems like it would be a reasonable idea to do it. The city would simply go out, draw up a contract, go out for bids, and essentially get a series of prices. What would your price be if we had 20% of the people sign up, 50% of the people, 70% of the people? And eventually the people would sign up, and more would sign up, and what the price would be for everybody. The homeowners that chose to participate would pay for it in their water bill. There would be a trash fee as well as an itemized administration fee that would cover the city's cost for administering and setting up the program. So those that opted out would not pay for any part of the service. Given the tremendous advantages of much better pricing, we'll get into that in a minute too, much better contract terms, lower truck traffic, less noise and pollution, as well as added convenience by paying on your water bill, I believe most homeowners would participate, and eventually the holdouts would join because the reduced volume for the non-designated homeowners would diminish to the point where they increase their prices unacceptably or quit servicing the area because they simply didn't have enough volume to justify driving around anymore. I examined the bills that John Eddy was talking about that he has on his blog, and I was really amazed that there is a tremendous variation in total cost being paid now by people in the city of Maplewood to the homes they currently have. For the 30-gallon service, there is a ratio of 1.6 between the highest and the lowest cost per year. It ran from $213 to $335 a year for the same 30-gallon trash service. The ratio for 60-gallon service is 3.4. The price ranged from $174 to $582 a year. 90-gallon service, the range was 2.7, running from $228 to $605 a year. Belonging to an organized trash group would by definition eliminate the price differences paid by homeowners for the same service. Other than that, I don't think it's just wrong questions.
Questions. The first question is for North St. Paul.
Excuse me. Hold the microphone, but not near the mouth. First question is for North St. Paul and for Little Canada. Do you have any information on reduced costs of road repair?
No, you're not. We have not done a study on that.
No, we haven't studied that directly either. Part of it is as you upgrade your roads, hopefully we have less wear and tear, but I think as Mr. Carnival indicated, I'm not aware of any specific studies that can document what savings are with road repair. I think it's more a common sense approach that leads over that conclusion.
Why don't you keep that? The next question is, how do you handle citizens who have problems?
Since we took over the building, the citizens call our utility billing person. She would deal with respective hauler to address that issue, or if they want to schedule a bulky item pickup, they call the city, and she schedules that and makes those arrangements with the homeowner.
Same way, the resident would call City Hall, schedule any service needs, or whether their cart was broken, or they had some special needs that they have. We would schedule that with the hauler and take care of it from that point.
Sure.
In the open system, you call your hauler, and good chance they'll be here tomorrow to take care of your problem.
Under the organized system, is there a way to put it on hold if you're gone from your house for a period of time?
The answer to that, I'm certain, is yes. And like most aspects, it's important to remember that there is no single organized system. Each one is uniquely designed by each city with their individual requirements. We, in our request for proposals, stated that they must allow people to suspend their service if they need to for a minimum of 3 weeks. So if you're going to be out of town for 3 weeks or more, you can turn off your service. That will have to be in the contract with the hauler if we move to organized collection. Another example that I would give you is that I know Little Canada has an exemption for people who have an environmentally responsible alternative. So if you're a business owner who lives in Little Canada and you already have a commercial dumpster, they have it written into their arrangement that you're allowed to exempt yourself from paying for the city service that you don't need, since you go to work every day to take your trash there, and they know that it's not being dumped in the side of the ditch somewhere.
Again, in the open system, you call up your hauler, tell him your problem. If he solves it the way you want, terrific. If not, shop around and find somebody else who will.
How do you handle that?
I think Mr. Matthew explained it pretty well. We do provide exemptions for people that are going to be gone for an extended period of time.
Is that how you handle it in our sample? Yes, we do the same way as far as exemptions and providing those services. Wanted to throw out another piece, and again, this is probably more unique to North St. Paul, and not to banter back and forth with the service issue, but because we are the community size that we are, someone calls in for something like a wheel or something replaced. Rather than us calling the hauler and waiting for the hauler to respond, we'll do that ourselves. Because, you know, when we talk about haulers and the small hometown haulers, for the most part, those hometown haulers are no longer there today. So you're dealing with a lot of larger corporations that are having to respond from a farther distance. You know, at least in our case, we're able to respond to that in a much quicker fashion.
Keep the microphone. Next question is, has organized collection reduced incidents of illegal dumping or abandoned waste?
It has, from the sake of the bulk collection, I guess I would call that. When we put our bulk collection in place, we were having people, as Joel was saying, dumping things in the parks or dumping things in the street. And now that we have the bulk collection where they're paying for that service monthly, much lesser rate, our cleanup throughout the city is well improved.
That's our experience is the same. As I stated earlier, we used to have some issues with things being dumped in ditches and roadsides. That's gone away. And I think when we had complaints about people dumping in business dumpsters, we don't get those complaints anymore either. And not that that still couldn't occur, but those complaints have been dramatically decreased.
I just wanted to respond to a comment a gentleman on the other end of the table made about local haulers disappearing. I just look at your list of licensed haulers in the city of Roseville, and of the 8 licensed haulers, 5 are local family-owned businesses. So you got plenty of local choices to deal with local folks here, not just the big companies.
This one is, how many extra employees, it says the city of Roseville, but what extra staff time are you anticipating to operate this program on a regular basis in Maplewood?
This was a big concern. We had a number of residents certainly voiced concerns about expanded payroll, and it's a concern to me and I think the rest of the council as well. So we made it very clear that we did not want to consider systems that would add unduly to the staff load. So a couple of things. One is that we are specifying that any contract would require the hauler to do the billing and to maintain and service the carts and so forth. In the end, we figure that administering the program going forward would be about comparable to what it takes us to administer the recycling program, which is an organized system as well. And that is accounted in our books as 20% of the time of a single city employee. I want to bring one point of comparison. One thing that people have suggested to us is that the problem we have is not that we need to change, but that we just need to enforce the current ordinance. We should call on the carpet the haulers who are violating the rate reporting ordinance or not doing the various things that are required, because we basically found that the city has made negligible effort ever to enforce the ordinance with various concessions that the haulers had made the last time Maplewood talked about organizing. When staff sat down and analyzed what it would take to properly and fully enforce the existing ordinance under an open system, they came up with a number that was about the same as what it would cost to administer a organized contract. So obviously ignoring the law is free, on the part of the city not enforcing it, but the cost of administering the program the way that we would anticipate doing it is essentially the same as going with the alternative idea of just enforcing the rules under the current system.
I could just comment from Little Canada's perspective. I asked our billing clerk this afternoon before I came here how much time she spent a week dealing with the refuse component of our utility billing system. She estimated 3 to 4 hours a week. And we have 10,000 people, 700 people in this system.
I'd asked John that question earlier today, and tripling the amount of time this person spends on their organized system, because we've got 3 times the population roughly in Roseville, Canada, and figuring out what a person of that stature would cost the city in total with the time it would take, it works out to about 60 cents per quarter, $2.40 a year, to pay the administrative fee for a Roseville employee to do the administrative work to maintain the program.
What's your experience in nursing? As far as employees, there was no employees added for this service. This was absorbed through our finance department and within my area for oversight.
There are 3 mandated government fees: total fuel, total county improvement charge, and total solid waste management.
Or which ones of these are not mandated by the government?
Here in Ramsey County, if you look at your bill, there are 2 actual government fees. One is called in various forms the CEC or the Ramsey CEC. It stands for County Environmental Charge, and that is 28% of your invoice base amount. The other charge is the State Solid Waste Management Tax, which sometimes is abbreviated as SWMT on your bill if you look at it closely. The SWMT, which goes to the state and funds various environmentally related things, cleanup and recycling programs and so forth, is 9.75%. Any other line that you see that's identified as a surcharge or a fee, in my experience, turns out to be a hauler charge. For example, you may have a fuel surcharge. That's just set by the hauler because they feel they should be getting more money to cover the cost of whatever is happening in the diesel market or other fuel they use. Sometimes you see something identified as an environmental fee. I've had residents who complain that that's a government fee of some type. If you go and find the fine print on the hauler websites, you'll see that the ones that have that, it's difficult to find, but they will explain this has no specific relationship to anything related to servicing your account. It's designed to recover their environmentally related expenses on a nationwide basis in all their operations. And so, in effect, they're saying, we're going to charge you this extra surcharge to cover our cost of complying with pollution rules in California where we have a landfill. That is set entirely at the discretion of the hauler. My favorite is one of the haulers that says their environmental fee is designed to ensure an appropriate operating margin. So, as I've said, if they think the environment of their bank vault is not green enough, they reserve the right to raise that fee.
Just in response to that, 2 things. Number 1, if you're not happy about your billing and you're not happy about what you're paying, shop around. That's the same thing as if you're buying groceries or you're buying cars or you're buying anything else. Shop around. Look at your bills and shop around. Be good consumers. And secondly, don't overlook the 2 numbers John gave you. One is 28% is what Ramsey County tax on top of your garbage bill, and another 9.5% or 9.75% that the state tax on top of your garbage bill. That's 37.75% on top of what the waste hauler charges you. You're paying to the county and the state. If you're concerned about prices and costs, you ought to be concerned about that as well, and let the elected officials know that that's nothing else that I know of. It gets taxed almost 40% on top of your bill.
like to make a couple of quick responses to that. The first is that it's true about those rates, but remember, they're based on what your bill is. So when you're in an organized city and you're paying, I found on average 20-50% higher in Maplewood than you would if you're organized based on the current rates, those higher rates are also being taxed. That extra surcharge is, you have to magnify the dollar amounts to include that. I think when Dick gave us those numbers, that was the hauler charges. You have to take that difference and add 28% and 37.75%. That was include the tax? Bottom line, okay. I've certainly found people overpaying by hundreds of dollars. This is the thing that really gets my goat when I looked at these trash bills. When you see those surcharges, the bill looks a lot